Okay. Um, so thank you for joining us, everyone. Really quick, Travis, can you unmute? I hate putting you on the spot with things, but you do go into a little bit of your feelings on the end of the movie in our podcast. Uh, there were some comments in the chat about the end of the movie. Um, Similar reactions that you get frequently of how incredible the end of the movie is and how touching it is, which it totally is. But would you go ahead and just share your thoughts at the end of the about the end of the movie and how they portrayed your character?
So you're talking about specifically kind of that conversation we had about that scene with me at the end where they're, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's hard for me to really, I don't want to destroy anyone's experience from that scene because I know a lot of people really love that scene. Um,
Hmm.
but for me personally, that the idea of me being sort of portrayed as this, I don't know, 6 foot tall guy, like that's my resurrected body was kind of, I didn't love that because I feel like it's sort of, there's this implication, especially I think within the church that we have that like your that your perfectness, that you becoming perfect is you becoming 6 feet tall and looking like sort of the quote unquote average person. And I think that's a very narrow minded way to look at the idea of perfection and eternal perfection. And so I just always kind of I get that sort of from a film perspective, like you have to portray my resurrected being in some way, and that was the way that TC chose to do it. But I just think it's a very narrow-minded idea that for me to become perfect, I have to be more like, you know, this person here who's 6 foot tall. And I'm very, I don't want to say offended by that because it's really not like I don't, it doesn't keep me up at night, but it's just sort of a thing that I think is, it's a very narrow-minded view of this idea of what perfection is. You know,
Hmm.
what is the perfect height? Like I don't know. And so for me to be the idea that I'm going to be, if I'm 6 feet tall, then suddenly I'm perfect. That just doesn't really jive with me, I guess. So
It's interesting because it you were a major enough character that it would have been strange if he left you out of that scene. And then, of course, the dominant idea of resurrection is that our bodies will be perfected. But like Serena and I have gone into in past episodes and in this episode, there's multiple scriptures that confirm that God does consider our desires, our righteous desires. And a lot of people don't view their disability as a negative thing, even completely. Like I go back and forth between positive, neutral, and negative. Um, so to say to be perfected, you have to look like Travis said, a 6 foot white person who's able-bodied. To say that that's perfect, it's pretty it's it's kind of easy to see how there's a lot of assumptions there and how those assumptions are based on our experience in mortality, right? We kind of impose our experience of mortality on what we think the afterlife looks like. And we have teachings from prophets who've received revelation, and we have scriptures about things about the afterlife, but there's so many specific things that we don't know. And it's eternity we're talking about. Eternity, we can't know everything about what it will look like and what our experiences will be. So yeah, often there is a ableist, sometimes racist, homophobic idea imposed on what the afterlife will look like when we don't really know that. Yeah. So yeah, it's like you said, you can't really blame TC because that's kind of what the church, that's kind of culture, like what people picture resurrected bodies look like. But we feel like it's pretty fair to question that based on scripture, based on disabled experiences that are happening for a reason. God made disabled people for a reason, and we believe there's holiness to that.
and the idea, I mean, what we don't know about the afterlife is a billion times more than what we think we do know. And so just this idea that we sort of assume that we're going to take this very small window of what we know in this reality and assume that that's going to be, that we can sort of put that into what's going to happen in the afterlife, I think is just a very interesting, narrow-minded kind of an idea. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we're not telling you how to think, but it's just important to be more open-minded, like you kind of mentioned before. Be okay with the fact that we don't totally know and don't impose our assumptions on other people.
right.
Don't look at a disabled person and be like, "Aren't you so excited to be resurrected?" Like that can be a really, really hard doctrine for people, and there's a lot of ways to interpret it. So, yeah, that's definitely a culture that hopefully will shift in the church.
For sure.
Yeah. Serena, do you want to add any thoughts to?
Just that if you're curious about my thoughts on this, I go into it quite extensively in our previous episodes and in this episode. Probably more extensively in other episodes. I get quite vehement. In this episode, yeah, I guess I would just emphasize the fact that I really do think it's up to the person's desires, and sometimes that changes day to day, like you're saying, Katie. I think it's tricky too because I mean, like Travis is not his character. You know what I mean? Like his character, the person that he's playing, is a completely different person, and even though they're both disabled, they might have different views. Sorry, my dog might have different views on Raul, can you calm down?
The wolf is back.
Raul! Hi, baby.
Oh my gosh,
Hi.
now my dog is in my face.
I was trying to finish my sentence, honey. Yeah, even though Travis is playing Albert, Albert is not Travis, maybe Albert wants to be resurrected that way, but Travis doesn't, and I think that's a possibility. I'm not saying it is that way. And that's just kind of tricky when it comes to like disability representation. Like we're so glad that we have that Travis played Albert, that we had a disabled person playing a disabled character. And I think it's good to acknowledge that and be grateful for that. But I think we also need to acknowledge that there's not that the actors sometimes may disagree with their characters on how a disability relates to their identity. Yeah, I think it's tricky too because I don't know. Yeah, because you don't always want to portray disabled people the same way. I think if it consistently happens where directors are portraying disabled people in a certain way that is contrary to the actors who are playing them, I think that would be, if you can see a pattern there, I think that would be more of an issue. But right now, there's so few portrayals of disability in the media anyway, that you can't even look for a pattern at this point because we need more representation in general. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of a balance, representation versus should we just be grateful for representation in general versus if we push too hard for specifics in regards to that representation, then will they say it's too difficult to represent us? You know what I mean? So yeah, we go into that a lot in this episode. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well said.
People are nervous to ask questions about I don't know how it's hard to have this conversation, Travis, with how you feel about how your character was represented at the end, because it's a hard thing. It's a hard discussion to have, and there's a lot of different opinions. And I think possibly, this is my perception, I think able-bodied people are often slow to ask disabled people their opinions on things or how they would want to be represented. I think they just kind of try to represent us the best way they can, and that's ultimately the best way to get around it, is make sure that the disabled person has a say in how they're represented. I mean, these are ideals that I'm saying, and I hope that Hollywood and real life will get there eventually. Law, everything, the government. But that's where this is solved, even though disabled people have different opinions on it. Like, if you involve us, nothing about us without us. If you involve us, then a lot of these issues wouldn't happen. They wouldn't really be a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a challenge. And I think about it in terms of even just out in the world, like in terms of accessibility. I mean, the problem is disability is such a general statement, right? Or it's such a general, I don't know, label, I guess, if you want to call it that. And so, like, to say to make a building accessible for one person, it may not be accessible for another person because everyone's disability is so different. And I mean, I feel like they're, not to get too crass here, I guess, but disabled bathrooms, like, there are things that they do that make a public restroom more disability friendly that are actually more difficult for me. So, I mean, it's so hard to, like, you can't please everyone and you can't hit everything all the time. But, and I think that's the same way in terms of representing disability in the media. You can't represent everybody, and you can't please everybody in the way you represent them all the time. But just simply simply making it, including it, is a huge step in in helping, and so, like, just even thinking about it is important, and is a right step in the right direction. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely.
Wonderful. Were you going to say something, Katie?
Oh, I was just going to say, is there any other things you wanted to share about the movie, Travis, that we didn't get to in the chat?
I mean, I don't have anything specific. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer that we didn't get to, or it's hard to me in kind of a chat to really answer a question in depth. So if anyone has something that they wanted more details on that I did answer in the chat, or other questions, I'm happy to answer it. But I don't have anything like that I specifically wanted to bring up. So.
Yeah, while Serena talks for a sec, guys, if you want to send a really quick message, a question, any last thoughts or questions for Travis, you can go ahead and send it in the chat now. Sorry, Serena, what did you have to say?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you to everyone who joined us. I think this was a special experience. I'm glad technology cooperated and that we were able to share this with everybody without everybody having to buy it on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I this movie brought, like, I remember watching it years ago and just being moved by the emotion and, like, oh, my pioneer ancestors, and logging into Family Search and be like, oh, look, they were in that company,
Yeah.
But I didn't realize until this time that, like how much disability played a role in it. Like, at the beginning you have them debating when to leave, and saying, oh, if we stay late, like, these people who are already sick or weak might not make it, and they just kind of, like, ignored that and went late anyway, despite knowing that it would be extra hard on people who already have disabilities. And yet by the end of it, a lot of able-bodied people at the beginning, like, ended up disabled and ended up having, like, amputations or their fingers falling off because of frostbite and whatnot, as the film indicated at the end. So I mean, I don't want to say karma because that sounds kind of bad, but it's interesting.
Sorry, I should have muted myself. That was kind of funny. Continue.
But it's interesting how both perspectives are shown. I don't ever want to say that someone deserved a disability for something that they did. Like, I think that's a really dangerous thing to say. But I'm glad that they included both sides of that. That they showed the interconnectedness of everything. What else was I going to say? Oh, I think at the end there with the one lady who refused to have her legs amputated, I was like,
Oh,
through her faith and hard work and prayer, she recovered. I was like, y'all didn't have to put that in.
it's hard because obviously having legs amputated back then was way different than having legs
True.
amputated now. But it is true that that narrative, like if you have the faith, you can be healed. If you work hard enough, you can be healed. That's another perspective that is, it's not, it doesn't work for a lot of disabled people. Miracles happen today, and I completely believe that. But how do you define a miracle? How do you define, if it's not the Lord's will and you want it so bad, if it's not the Lord's will, it's not going to happen. Does that mean that one person's less faithful than another person? Yeah, I think I thought the same thing when I read that.
Like, I'm glad it worked out for that particular person, and I'm glad it aligned with her desires, that she saw fruit of her desires and determination. But I agree. I just think the way they presented it, like you said, is kind of dangerous, because it, like you said, it perpetuates that idea that able-bodied people use against disabled people. Yeah, just because something is true for one person, for one disabled person, does not mean that it's true for other disabled people. And so, yeah, I think just
Or a
take,
healthy way to view disability in general,
yeah,
because if one person has a miracle in their life and they're healed from some kind of physical or whatever weakness, disability, disabled people still exist after that person, somehow is healed or whatever happens. Disability will always be a thing, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a sad thing. And when we look at it like it's this tragic thing, like if someone works so hard and they still are disabled, like it's not tragic, it's just life. It's this person's life on earth, and everyone else has their lives on earth and their struggles, and this is ours, and it's different, but it's not bad, it's not worse. Yeah, I thought when I was watching the movie too, I was thinking about how awesome it is that like despite the toll that was taken on the mortal bodies, disabled and non-disabled people, and the people who became disabled, despite the toll, like it showcased how much more important it is, spirituality is. Like in the end, our mortal bodies, whether they're disabled or not disabled, it's not really significant. Like everyone has the ability to be spiritual, to have spirituality, to have faith, to take action because of their faith. And I feel like this movie did a good job of showcasing that, not really limiting that because of a mortal experience in a certain body.
Raul is getting antsy, so I might have to sign off.
Oh, that's fine.
This is an off topic, I guess, but just to answer, because Lauren asked a question about how long it was between filming 17 Miracles and Ephraim's Rescue. So I filmed 17 Miracles in August of 2010, and I believe Ephraim's Rescue was filmed in 2012, sometime kind of the beginning to middle of 2012. So there's the answer to that.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So it's been a while.
Yeah. It's crazy how long it has been, but
Throwback.
yep.
Okay, so we're gonna send out a petition to get everyone to help Travis get his crutch back from TC. If everyone could sign it. It's been 10 years, he's had him long enough.
I agree. I think initially he was using it like in firesides he would bring it and stuff, but I don't know how he used it or if he's still doing that. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's a little okay. I'm not gonna delve into that.
I don't know all the details of that. I just think that that's why he wanted to keep them. But
Interesting.
I don't know.
Very interesting. Let's see. Let me just put our website in the chat box one more time. Oh, I need to finish the transcript for the Beyond the Block episode. Sorry, y'all, we're getting it. Okay. This is our website and we post all our episodes there, including transcripts. Once our transcripts are done, we try to get the transcripts done within a couple days, for those people who prefer reading it to hearing it. Although we are catching up a little bit, because we got behind. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so we'll be posting the episode of the interview with Travis. We'll be posting it there on the website, probably in like less than an hour. I could probably get it up within the next few minutes, and you can listen to it directly on the website, or you can listen to it, I think, on Google Play, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon. That was my dog. He wants to go outside. He's ringing his bells. Yeah, you can listen to it on all the major platforms or on the website. Yeah, so I so
and there will be
glad
things that we didn't talk about today that we talked about in that episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, be sure to listen to that. There's some really good content there. Travis, thank you for spending so much time with us this week on everything. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And thanks for everyone who joined. It was nice to see so many people. So.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Stay in
Be
touch
sure
with
to follow
us.
Travis. Follow Travis on social media and us. We'll continue to share really good content about disability perspective and rights and spirituality and everything. Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Bye.